sorry, I keep on getting disconnected. I don't know why. Okay, so first came the Spaniards who, quote unquote, liberated us from the enslavement of the devil, whatever that means for them. Next came the Americans who, again, liberated us from the Spanish oppression. Then the Japanese who liberated us from the American imperialism. So it's always liberation from the colonist's perspective. But is it really liberation? We all know that it's not, right? Then the Americans again, who liberated us from the Japanese fascists. After every liberation, they found their country occupied by foreign benefactors. And we are reading this all in quotes. If you see quotes, usually it means, oh, we're just taking these words from their mouths. Other interpretation for quotes, debatable. The people resisted each ruler, although each struggle sought to change certain objectives conditions. It had its most profound effect on the people themselves. The intensity and direction of each struggle depended on the nature of the oppression. Oh no, I think my internet is acting up and oh no, everyone got disconnected as well. Oh no. Let me just quickly check my channel's videos. Does it like, oh no. Oh no. I'm not really sure what's going on with my internet right now. Oh my god! My internet! Oh my god! Let us wait for everyone to reconnect. While we are waiting, I'm going to shove some food into my mouth because my breakfast has been extended to lunch. Even Converge is being BB-phobic right now. Oh no. Anyway, while we are waiting for everyone else to reconnect, I would really appreciate it if you share my link to friends and families. As I always say, please share the good word that I exist. Your mommy dragon, Moon Eater. Share my pages to your friends, your families, your enemies, your local politicians, even the random strangers you see on the internet. It will do us good that they know about me. Are we all ready? Are we all back in place? Bread, yes. Hello, Texima. Welcome to the chat. All my friends are bread. If you know, you know. Now, where are we? Let us continue because I got disconnected. The people resisted each ruler, although each struggle sought to change certain objectives, conditions. It had its most profound effect on the people themselves. The intensity and direction of each struggle depended on the nature of the oppression and on the objective and subjective level of the oppressed people at each given time and place. The type of oppression, in turn, was determined by the nature of the colonizing society as well as by the objective conditions in the colony. It is therefore as essential to know the character of each society that intruded into Philippine shores as it is to study the social formations that these foreign rulers encountered at time of conquest. Society in transition. What were the circumstances surrounding the first liberation? What was the nature of the Spanish society at that time? There is some confusion among Philippine scholars regarding the type of society that prevailed in Spain during the age of discoveries and conquests. The general impression is that Spain was feudal and that she therefore transplanted the classical features of feudalism to the Philippines. The historically established fact is that while Spanish society at the time of Magellan's voyage still exhibited feudal characteristics, its economic base was no longer completely feudal. So, just a little refresher. Feudalism, you have your levels of society. At the very top is the king, and then there are people who were given land by the king, etc., etc. And then at the very bottom, there are peasants. Okay. Capitalist enterprise was changing the configurations of the country, although the old feudal institutions persisted with few modifications, and along with these institutions, the modes of behavior, values, and other aspects of consciousness which characterized the old order. A given economic structure does not automatically produce the legal, cultural, political, and other institutions corresponding to it. Wait. I moved the page and now I'm lost. History demonstrates that long after a particular basic economic structure has disappeared, vestiges of its corresponding superstructures and institutions linger on and eventually become impediments to the growth of new socio-economic base. So let's just discuss that. So although they were not completely feudal anymore, the habits that developed in the society, the way they think, and the way people operated still lingers on. And even if they kind of changed, there are still old ways of thinking going on the back of everyone's heads. And that's why it's really hard to speed run to growth. We can say the same thing about our country. That's what I was discussing earlier. Although we are not colonized anymore after, I don't know, what year did we get emancipated? I forgot. But after 100 of years or a lot of decades later, we still have this colonized way of thinking. And that is why we are finding it hard to move on and make decisions based on where we are right now. In the same way, even if we are not in martial law anymore, there are still fears and ways of thinking that were programmed by those events that are still in the minds of people, especially those who experienced it, but not to the degree of those who were actually greatly affected by it. Because back then, a lot of things were propaganda. The media was controlled by the government. And if they're not controlled by the government, they die. It's as simple as that. They die or they disappear without a trace. So they're technically not dead, but also at the same time, you know that they're dead. So even if that's not the case anymore, the people who experience that think that, oh, that is just the way it is. It's like a boiling frog. The water is not too hot because it boiled very, very slowly, and they adapted to it, and they think that it is normal even if they're dying inside of that pot. Oh no, Alius, no, I'm not reading the Bible. You will never hear me read the Bible here unless it's to debunk some stuff that people are saying. We are reading the Philippines, a past revisited by Renato Constantino. This was written in the 1970s. It is a new interpretation of Philippine history. Welcome to the stream. Yes, 1943. Thank you, Magindara. So you see, we have been colonized far longer than we are actually free. So again, this brings us back to what we read and what I was saying earlier, that even if you change the system, there are still things that remain, and usually that is the mindset of the people. Some of us, a lot of us, still think in the colonized way, especially the tools of colonization that the Spanish used on us. And not just the Spanish, but even the Americans, they are deeply ingrained in our culture now. Christianity, the local education. Our first history books were, you know, they painted the Americans in the light of our saviors. Oh, they emancipated us from Spain, blah, blah, blah. And then from Spain, you have, oh, we gave you Christianity. We emancipated you from the devils. And now we have people who think that, oh, we should not question the government because God put them there. But need I to remind everyone that even Jesus, he was not strictly a pacifist. He overturned tables at the temple when they were doing shady things. So it's not always peace, happiness, rainbows all the time. And I forgot what part it is in the Bible that said that it's our duty to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. So I don't know why. I don't know why people are cherry picking about their religion. I'm not even like, well, technically, like officially, I'm a Christian, although I'm not. I don't know why they only pick the things that they should learn from. But yeah, that's something that I choose to pick, to speak for the people who are not able to speak for themselves. Where are we? A given economic structure does not automatically produce the legal wait, we have, where are we? Okay, let's just read from there. A given economic structure does not automatically produce the legal, cultural, political, and other institutions corresponding to it. History demonstrates that long after a particular basic economic structure has disappeared, as we have discussed, vestiges of its corresponding superstructures and institutions linger on and eventually become impediments to the growth of the new socio-economic base. It is the presence of these excuse me, institutional vestiges that sometimes obscures perception of the advent of a new economic system. Spain, during its period, was already witnessing the transformation of its social fabric with the rise of the middle class. The serfs have been emancipated, the towns were becoming centers of economic activity, and a new focus of economic strength. To the old contradiction between serfs and their lords was added a new one, that between the wealthier members of the middle class and on one hand, the nobility and the clergy on the other. The workers supported the middle class against the nobles and the clergy. This clash of economic interests did not, however, prevent the rich merchants from aping the manners and values of the nobility. In fact, the letrados were awarded certain distinctions by the state, some even becoming nobles. The basis of the middle class were the towns. As these towns grew wealthy with the development of industry and commerce, the prosperous merchants clamored for legal equality and political power, which they didn't have at that time. Although they were jealous of their new prerogatives and strongly committed to their own charters, they nevertheless allied themselves with the monarchy and supported the centralizing and absolutist policies of the king, insofar as these were directed against the nobility and the clergy. So, as you can see, they were supporting the king because the king's policies were against the nobilities, which they are jealous of, which they hate. So, yes, the king welcomed this alliance for financial and tactical reasons. The middle class controlled the new wealth and was practically the only group which paid taxes, notwithstanding the huge land holdings of the nobility and the church. The monarchy successfully used the economic challenge posed by the rising middle class as a leverage against the clergy and the nobility. So, as you can see, we think of the Spanish rule back then, that the clergy and the king were like basically buddies, chums, besties. Now we are learning that, oh, back then they were not. They were really not, because the church is trying to impose its own power, because to them, basically, God gave us power. And then you have the monarchy, the king, which is more of a government. So two different types of powers clashing against each other. And we have your middle class, the merchants. They allied with the king because they hated the nobles and the church. Because again, they were basically jealous. Because for a long, long time, these were the people who had power over them. The monarchy successfully used the economic challenge posed by the rising middle class as leverage against the clergy and the nobility. By gaining dominance over the latter, the king counteracted the centrifugal tendencies within his domain and assured its unity as a state. Now let me just take a sip of my coffee. Unity in a feudal shell. Throughout Europe, national sovereignty had become an imperative for the growth of the new economic forces required conditions of peace. Stability was impossible while a country was divided among warring feudal lords, but a well-established central authority could provide both the peace and the free access to wide territories that a burgeoning capitalism required. This was the economic imperative that spurred the establishment of the Western state system. The rise of various nation-states was accompanied by the decline of the Papacy, or, the power that came from the Pope, the Catholic Church, as a temporal power, although it remained a potent ideological force. But even during the heyday of the Papacy, financial and mercantile capital had already begun to insinuate itself into the interstices of feudal society. This capitalist activity was to become the solvent of the medieval world. It spurred technological progress, which revolutionized navigation, thus making possible the era of discoveries. It was also this capitalist spirit that was to manifest itself in revolt against the restrictive policies of the feudal order. In the celebration of the competitive spirit and individualism, and the Reformation, the essence of which was private enterprise in religion. Despite its feudal shell, the Spain that sent Magellan to the east, to us, already had definite capitalist burgeons. So, this is one thing that I want children to understand, because I also had the chance of teaching in a public school before. And what saddens me is that they don't know at grade 6 or grade 5. I forgot what grade that was, because I was teaching 2 grades at the same time. But around that age, they don't know about how Spain came here. What was the motivation? They don't even know about the 3 Gs. I think a lot of us would already know that, because a lot of my viewers are on their 20s and maybe early 30s. The 3 Gs, which is God, gold, and glory. So it's not just all about God, not about spreading the faith. It's about gold and glory, which is, capitalism. They want these spices or these riches and glory. They want to one up the other party, which was also running around colonizing different unclaimed lands. So yeah, where was I? But to understand more fully those colonial policies peculiar to Spain, it is necessary to examine briefly her earlier history. So now we are moving on to why are the Spanish like this? What happened to them? Why did they do what they did and how they did it? In the year 711, so this is the Moorish conquest, an army of Arabs and Berbers under a certain commander Tariq landed on the rock which now bears the name Gibraltar from Gebel Tariq, or the mountain of Tariq. The Muslim invaders were able to subdue the entire peninsula with the exception of areas in the northwest which remained Christian. In these areas, the small Christian states of Leon, Castile, Navarre, and Aragon flourished. Individually or in concert, these states fought the Moors and steadily pushed them into the kingdom of Granada in the south. In the 13th century, the kingdoms of Leon and Castile were united as the Kingdom of Castile. Catalonia had previously joined Aragon to form the Kingdom of Aragon, so they were joining forces. Their efforts is, to expel the Moors. It received papal sanction and the support of the rest of Catholic Europe. These wars, which encompass nearly 800 years, are called the Reconquista. The Reconquista itself, like the subsequent voyages of discovery, was impelled by and fostered the emergence of capitalist enterprise in Spain. Yay, capitalism! The year 1492 marked both the end of the Reconquista and the discovery of America. The end of the Moorish Wars and the beginning of the great voyages of discovery occurred during the reign of a royal couple who united in wedlock the Iberian kingdoms of Castile and Aragon. So you remember those two kingdoms formed by two other little states uniting. So now they're all together. Like we're all in this together. High School Musical, holding hands. So let's meet the Catholic monarchs. The marriage of Ferdinand and Isabella. Do those names ring a bell? Ferdinand and Isabella? Not the same Ferdinand that is in the minds of people nowadays, but Ferdinand, as in the king of Spain back then, resulted in the adoption of uniform policies in both kingdoms. So we must remember Castile and Aragon were two separate kingdoms from four different states, and they were united because Ferdinand and Isabella married each other to consolidate the power, a factor which fostered the birth of the Spanish nation. So that's how the Spanish nation got together. They completed pacification work within their respective realms before proceeding to the final conquest of Granada to terminate the 800-year campaign against the Moors. So basically, Spain was united because the Moors were attacking them, so they had to join forces together. They formed two kingdoms, and then these two kingdoms got married politically and literally to each other. Isabella of Castile ruled the kingdom that commanded the central tableland that slants away from the Mediterranean. It was a region characterized by austerity and religiosity, a daughter of a mad princess and herself the mother of a mad queen. Isabella was a woman deeply obsessed with what she conceived to be her principal duty on earth, that of being God's instrument for the propagation of faith, which, trickles down to what happened here, since that's her main concern, to spread Christianity. That's how we are Christians now. Ferdinand of Aragon reigned over a kingdom of the Ebro Valley, which sloped towards the Mediterranean. He was therefore exposed to the influence of political developments in Italy, a fact which made him ambitious for the wealth and power that conquest reaps. So that's where the, you know, the gold part comes in, because like he grew up thinking that, political conquest. So those two monarchs, they ruled in equal footing, because as we said earlier, Isabella is not just a queen because she married a king. She was also like the monarch heir to this kingdom. The king was from another kingdom, and when they got married, they basically putting two powers together. So it's not like, oh, the wife is under the husband. It's more of, okay, we are partners. That's the kind of deal going on here. The medieval crown of Aragon, with its business-like urban aristocracy, had a cosmopolitan outlook and mercantile proclivities. Castile, though predominantly pastoral, was not immune to the rising surge of capitalism. Its people were acquiring their own commercial and maritime experiences. The peasants were withdrawing from agriculture as a result of the growth of the Mesta, the Sheep Farmers Guild. A Spanish wool fed a growing domestic textile industry. The expansion of the wool trade with Northern Europe stimulated the development of the ports of San Sebastian, Laredo, Santander, and Coruña. Okay, let me just... Where's my water? I'm going to claim hydrate for myself. I'm just going to open my 1 liter box of mango juice. Thank you for the hydrate redeem. I'm already drinking. Stretch. Let us continue with the new tastes of Europe. The victories of the Reconquista developed the city of Seville. By the 15th century, the city had become an active commercial center where Spanish traders and their counterparts in the Mediterranean lands gathered to plan new ventures. Barcelona became Spain's greatest mercantile and industrial center. There, a wide variety of fabrics were manufactured, as well as pottery, barrels, rope, glass, and many other articles. Valencia was almost as prosperous as Barcelona. The wealth and grandeur of these cities attested to the magnitude of industry and commerce in their respective regions. These internal economic developments were the underlying factors that spurred the great voyages of discovery. The sea routes that Spain's adventurers took, however, were dictated by fortuitous impediment. The wars of the Crusades, the wars of the cross, basically colonizers trying to spread the word of the Lord through their swords, which had brought the people of Western Europe into closer contact with East, had created among the Crusaders now tastes in food, luxuries, and other refinements of living. And so, tastes of people changes. Europeans learned to prize cinnamon, pepper, nutmeg, ginger, and other spices. You see where this is leading to? Spices. These spices, together with dyes, perfumes, precious stones, and other items of luxury, were transported by ship or caravan to ports in the eastern Mediterranean. Venetian and Genoese merchants brought these goods to Italy. Italian middlemen took charge of the distribution in Western Europe. The Spaniards and the Portuguese were interested in participating in this lucrative trade. So they saw this, oh, I see, you're trading spices and other nice things. I want in. Because they are newly capitalists, right? But the Mediterranean was close to them by Venetian naval power. So what did they do? This forced Spain and Portugal to finance voyages in search of new routes. So this whole discovery thing, this is where it came from, because they can't get into that trade. The voyage of Ferdinand Magellan led to his quote-unquote discovery of the Philippines in 1521. Spain dispatched other expeditions to this part of the globe. The one headed by Miguel Lopez de Legazpi began the colonization of the islands in 1565. So it's not just, a one-time big time Ferdinand Magellan came here and then we all held hands and became Christians. No, it's not like that. It took a lot of years. It took several expeditions. And if you would remember, Fernando Magallanes got killed by the locals because they didn't want any of that. The Spanish occupation of the Philippine archipelago occurred 80 years after Spain had entered the modern era. Let's move to the next part. Primitive accumulation. England, Holland, and Portugal were engaged in the same expansionist ventures, for this was the era of primitive accumulation, the period when the emerging capitalist centers were acquiring the initial fund which was to launch capitalism as a world system. Let's continue. This accumulation took various forms. Internally, it meant the separation of the producers from the means of production. The classic example being the enclosures in England, where the demand for wool in the new textile factories encouraged the lords to fence off their lands to convert them into grazing areas for sheep, thus dispossessing the peasants. So you remember in feudalism, the main thing was farming, and the peasants were there to farm. Now that there is a trade for wool, the lands that were used for farming now became grazing areas for the sheep. External techniques of accumulation consisted of piracy and plunder of colonies acquired through the voyages of discovery, just exactly how they did it to us. Thus, we see the growth of capitalism had been inseparable from colonialism since the era of primitive capital accumulation. This period saw the conquest of Mexico and South America, the heyday of piracy and privateering, when buccaneers were knighted, and the peak of the Negro slave trade. Okay, this is a legit term that they used for people of color, black people back then. Between the 16th and 18th centuries, the development of world market for an expanding capitalism required the subjection and exploitation of the peoples of Africa, Asia, and Latin America, the underdeveloped continents today. And as you can see, this still has a lot of impact, right? They exploited these lands, and now we are still underdeveloped compared to them. So when you're saying past is past, it's not really the past if the effects are taking effect, until today. We are still affected by it. If the past is the past, we will not be talking about it. The past is there as a reminder. The voyages conducted by the Spaniards were part of the initial efforts to develop a world economic system. When Legazpi set forth on his trip to the Philippines nearly a century after the Columbian discoveries, the Spanish colonies in the Americas were already thriving satellites linked to the metropolis in Europe. And Spain had many years of experience in dealing with her colonies in America. So they kind of used America as a practicing ground for colonizing other places, such as, hey, the Philippines. But despite the fact that Spain commanded a big empire, she herself became an economic dependency of the more developed capitalist states of Europe. first Holland, later England, and France. Spain therefore had no choice but to respond to the capitalist system, although she was only on the margin of capitalist development. Her economic policies during this period of accumulation served the ends of her more powerful capitalist neighbors. Her colonial policies were implementations of the mercantilist system prevailing at the time. So, as you can see, this is not the type of history that we discuss in schools. I can clearly remember that when they discussed the conquest of Spain, they frame it in such a way as Spain and Portugal are like competing against each other to colonize the rest of the world. They divided the world into places that each of them can colonize. But that is just the tip of the iceberg. We must also learn that, oh, this is happening because of capitalism. They're moving based on their capitalistic needs, and they're not at the top of the food chain. There are other countries who are more power over them in terms of capital. Hello, Elliot. I don't know what you're up to, but welcome to my stream. The Philians. We're the Philippines. We are the Philippines. And we're not Philians. But if there's something that I agree about is that the Philippines and Indonesia are facing similar struggles. Because we also faced similar histories back then. A lot of colonization does a lot of things to country. Now, let us continue. Spain's products flowed to... Wait. Let's go back a bit. Mercantilism. Mercantilism was the manifestation of capitalism in the stage of birth. The mercantilists believed, among other things, that the power of a country depended on the specie that it could accumulate. Thus, the shipment of metal out of the country was discouraged and the acquisition of gold and silver was encouraged. So again, the gold god and glory thing. The colonies served as sources of gold and silver, and if they were not producers of such precious metals, a system of trade with other countries was instituted utilizing the products of those colonies to achieve a favorable trade balance for continued accumulation. So, as you can see, their main thing was we must have gold and silver. And so they colonized these countries because you can get more in gold and silver if you have more land. And if they don't have gold and silver, they would take the products of those land and trade it to other lands to get more gold and silver. Spain's products flowed to her scattered domains while cargoes of gold and silver were poured back. These precious metals were used to service Spain's mounting foreign debts to German and Italian banking houses. So, foreign debts sounds familiar. The Spanish monarchs were continually borrowing from these foreign financiers to finance their wars and their voyages. Moreover, gold was sent to England in order to pay for imports, which Spanish citizens were buying in increasing quantities from English merchants. Paradoxically, the wealth of Spain's American colonies only made her more dependent in the northern European nations. The steady flow of gold from the American colonies fostered the mercantilist impulse to discover more lands. Discovering sources of the metal became more important than establishing new industries to produce for the home market. Spain bought manufacturers from the more advanced capitalist nations like the Netherlands and England paid with gold from her colonies, thus becoming dependent on both. The vast resources of her colonies undercut the drive toward industrialization. The search for gold became a preoccupation that led to the underdevelopment of Spain vis-a-vis the developing economy of England. So, when we are talking about Spain and its colonization of our lands, we must consider all these other nations and how they interact with each other. Conquest as business. Everything is business anyway. Let's read the comments. Yeah, honey. If you want to stay here, you must remain respectful to everyone in the chat. The Reconquista and the occupation of the Canary Islands by the Kingdom of Castile provided the experience for Spain's future conquest. During the Reconquista, the crown had made it a practice to enter into contracts with leaders of military expedition against the Moors. Again, we are coming back to that. It's all because the Moors invaded them and now they're trying to do expeditions against them. These contracts provided the precedent for the capitulation, the typical document of agreement between a Spanish monarch and the conquistadores of the New World. In these contracts, certain rights were reserved to the crown and the conquered territories, while conquistadors were assured of rewards in the form of positions, spoils, the conquest, grants of land, and ennoblement. So basically, they're hiring people to do colonization for them. So there was a contract, and these lands are mine, but like you can get these other things, and we'll make you a noble as well. That's the kind of deal that they're getting into here. Expeditions were financed by the king, by public institutions, and also by private enterprises. So it's not just the kings that commission these people to do these expeditions. There are also private and public institutions. Now we're coming to Magellan's voyage. So Magellan's voyage is exactly that. It was financed officially by Casa de Contratación in Seville. It was part of the king's business. It was a typical mercantilist venture for the discovery of mines or the sources of spices. It would constitute an assurance of the inflow of metal into Spanish coffers, either directly from the newly discovered land or indirectly through a monopoly of the trade in spices, which is something that we are very familiar with. The religious justification. Now we're coming to the real shit here. Because a lot of times they would justify whatever Spain did to us by saying that, but they brought Christianity to us. If not, we would still have been animist. We would still be talking to our ancestors and basically worshipping trees, the sun, blah blah blah. And first of all, that's not a bad thing. Second of all, anyway. Oh, hello, Tsukuyomi. Hello, mommy. I'm very late. I did so many chores and woke up at 9 a.m. Honey, you woke up earlier than me. I woke up at 10 a.m. and I'm like, shoot, I'm late for my stream. But I still stream at 10:20, around that time. Yes, I took a 5-minute nap, and that 5-minute nap turned into 3 hours. Maghindara, you, our certified monster fucker. Maghindara. 3 men and 3 women. Oh, oh my god, that reminds me of a certain Doctor Who episode. That one where the lady turned into wood, like a tree trunk. 3 women. But a hot tree woman is, I forgot the district, but it's in, what's this? J. Lawrence movie. What's, I forgot the Hunger Games. The tree woman. Yes, she's hot. I like. Anyway, let me continue and remove my mind space from 3 women. Where was I? Of course, these objectives were not given as the real reason for the expedition. So they were not going to conquer the people or go on an expedition saying, hey, we're doing this for mercantilism and capitalism. We need money. We need gold and silver. They had to justify it through other means. As always, there had to be an ideological justification for such enterprises. Just like what we see today. They're not saying, oh, we're running for office so that we can get more power, more money, so that we can rob the people more. They're always going to say that, oh, we want this to happen. We want to have unity or some other stupid shit. Anyway. As always, there had to be an ideological justification for such enterprises in order to conceal the crass motives of kings. In this instance, it was religion. Religious zeal disguised the economic content of the voyages of discovery and colonization. It was also largely responsible for the survival of feudal values and institutions in the conquered lands. For the Catholic Church was a pillar of feudalism. That is why, even if Spain was not that feudalistic anymore, when we read our Philippine history, it would seem like, oh, Spain was a feudal state, blah, blah, blah. And that's why they treated us like this. That's not exactly the case. Although they still have the vestiges of feudal systems, they were mostly going for the mercantilist, capitalist way of things. But when they conquered us, they wanted the people to think that, oh, we're doing this for the glory of God. We're trying to Christianize you because you are devil worshipping savages and heathens, basically. And that's why they sent the Catholic Church. And when you bring in the Catholic Church, they were the ones in power in feudalism. That's why they ran things here the way they did. The theopolitical nature of Spanish colonialism in the Philippines will be better understood if we review the relationship between the Spanish monarchs and the Papacy, the Church. The Papacy during this period was a beleaguered state engaged in various struggles with emerging states and at the same time militantly working for the Christianization of the world. Its mission to proselytize has been given a powerful impulse by the Crusades and by the Mohammedan threat to Europe. The Spanish Reconquista was part of this mission. Although the papacy as a temporal power had a lot of ground with the development of the nation-state system, its religious influence on the people and on the rulers themselves allowed it to retain its status as a powerful institution in Europe. The Spanish people and their monarchs were still captives of the myth that one legitimate way of acquiring a crown was by papal grant. Again, we're coming back to that belief, the Catholic belief that, you know, the leaders were appointed by God. And therefore, a lot of people back then until now believe that the way to being a king is be allied with the Catholic Church. Despite the fact that Spain was already an emerging capitalist state, she still preserved her old ties with the papacy and sought, as other Catholic countries did, theological sanction for her activities. Basically, they're like, we're doing this because the church allowed us to, or the church wanted us to. After the discovery of America, Pope Alexander VI, issued several bulls, papal bulls, granting the Spanish sovereign exclusive right over the newly discovered territory. Again, they think that since the Pope said that, they granted us right, and therefore these lands are rightfully ours because it came from the Pope, and therefore it came from God. Those were the justifications. In a bull issued on May 4th, 1493, the Pope drew a demarcation line, the one that we are talking about earlier, 100 leagues west of the Azores and the Cape Verde Islands. All lands west of the line were marked off for Spain, those east of the line for Portugal. So basically, they divided the world into two, and they're like, you go ravage the west, and then you go ravage the east, so that you two bickering children don't fight. A year later, in the Treaty of Tordesillas, Spain and Portugal agreed to move the line 370 miles west to the Cape Verde Islands. The so-called Alexandrian donation by Pope Alexander VI divided the world between Spain and Portugal for purposes of discovery and colonization. As Pocahontas once said, you think you own whatever land you land on. Colonizers, kings, and popes. Let me just drink my mango juice. The acceptance of papal sanction over these questions, however, should not mislead us into thinking that in internal matters, the monarchs of Spain were in position of subordination to the papacy. The fact is that while the kings of Spain were the most ardent champions of Catholicism in Europe, within their domains, they were most consistent and persistent in limiting ecclesiastical authority. So, in other words, don't let the fact that they're like being buddies and chums on paper with the Catholic Church fool you that they were following the Catholic Church. They're actually secretly, not that secretly, but you know what I mean. They were trying to limit the power of the church over the people because they were the ones who wanted to have power over the people. And the church is kind of a threat to them because the church also has power over the people. The Christians believe the Pope, and by extension, the Christians would believe the Friars. So they wanted to limit that, but at the same time, they're not beyond using the power of the church to justify the colonization that they were doing. Kings resented the intrusions of popes into Spanish politics, right? Like we said, they hated when the popes tried to get into politics, although they themselves exerted their influence at times brazenly to secure the election of popes who would favor them. So you see, just like today, people try to get people elected to, further their own interests. Cronies, anyone? In their disputes with the popes, the Spanish monarchs were often supported by the Spanish clergy. A document written by a Dominican maintained that it would be lawful to make war on the Pope, and further argued that since during the period of belligerence, communication with Rome would be disrupted, the bishops of Spain could take over the prerogatives of the Pope in deciding certain ecclesiastical questions. The popes retaliated, obviously, with threats of excommunication. For those who are not Christians, excommunication means that, oh, we no longer recognize you as a child of this church. You shall burn in hell. Basically, that's the message. Oh my God, Urza, I'm so happy that you noticed that. Yes, it is intentional. My earrings are basically modeled this way because it's my name, Bibi. Yes, even my booba hole. Wait, I don't think you can see it right now. Let me just show it quickly. Where is my booba hole? Hold on. Where's my Viado tube? Let me move myself. You see, it is ba for Bakunawa. Anyway, let's go back to what we were reading. Many books written by Spanish churchmen defending the royal position vis-a-vis the Pope were placed in the Index in Rome as writings which Catholics were forbidden to read. Anyway, but they were not so listed in the Index of Spanish Inquisition. So you see, one way of controlling people is by controlling the books they are allowed to read. And currently, even today, some people are trying to do that. Lately, we have been experiencing local publishing houses being red tagged. They were being accused as communists or terrorists. Just recently, this past week, Adarna House has been red tagged just for selling books that were historically based. And last March, I think there were at least 2 book chains that were vandalized, accusing them of being terrorists and communists as well. If you want to control how the people think, you control the books that they read. And that's what they are doing here. Let's go to the next part. The Patronato Real. In the frequently stormy relations between king and pope, we see the contradictions between 2 heads of state over mundane matters. The Church of Spain was rich. It was the richest proprietor in the country. While we have no data on church property during Ferdinand's reign, we may infer its extent from the fact that towards the middle of the 16th century, the combined rents of the clergy amounted to over $75 million a year, or half the total of the kingdom. Now, when I say $75 million a year, I'm not quite sure if it was 1970s era of conversion of money, or it was the 16th century era. But to put that into perspective, even if we don't know which is which, let's just read the latter part of the sentence. It's half the total of the kingdom. So imagine all the rents of everything in the Philippines. Imagine that half of that would belong to the church. That is how wealthy the Church of Spain was. Jealous of the enormous economic and spiritual power of the church in Spain, Ferdinand sought to capture this vital force by attempting to subordinate the church himself. He saw this opportunity with the Reconquest of Granada in 1492 as a reward for his zealous efforts in driving away the infidel Moors. He asked for and received from the Pope a Patronato Real over all the churches to be established in Granada. This was exactly what the crown wanted. and Ferdinand skillfully maneuvered thereafter to secure from the papacy extensions of his patronato to all his overseas dominions on the ground that evangelizing the heathen of the Indies, basically us and all the other colonies, was the same as recovering Granada for Christendom. So they had their own issues and they were trying to make it seem that they're taking it out on us. Evangelical work in the new territories thus came under royal supervision. Every priest who went to the Indies had to have royal permission. Moreover, since the colonies were administered from Mexico and there were no papal legate in America, Rome had no direct contact with the clergy in the new lands. See, there were clergy in the new lands. They were Christians, Catholics, but they had no direct contact with Rome. Figure that out. The monarchs also had veto power over the promulgation of papal bulls and exercised through his viceroy's close supervision over the ecclesiastics in the dominions, having acquired from the Pope, by virtue of the Patronato Real, the right to nominate bishops and priests. The king energetically used this prerogative, thus precipitating constant conflicts between the crown and the papacy in the matter of appointment to bishoprics. So usually there should be a separation of the church and the government, right? Here in the Philippines. But back then in Spain, the king was granted the power to nominate bishops and priests, and that kind of power, it just brought conflict between the king and the main church, which is the one in Rome, the papacy, because, you know, they're basically two kings. And you cannot serve two kings, as they say. Okay, let's continue the religious garb. The Patronato Real, in effect, gave the king vast powers, which he shrewdly used to serve his ends. These ends were, of course, not purely religious, because, again, he is the king. He is not a religious head. Ferdinand, politician that he was, saw the opportunity given to him to appropriate some of the powers and economic advantages that the church enjoyed. Since the religious in Spain were to a certain extent under royal control by virtue of the patronato, this enabled him to prevent a bifurcation of power within Spain. Bifurcation, just like, you know, the thing people do with their tongue. You split it into two. Thus, Spain became the church, not the Church of Rome, but the church of rising commercial interests. So, as we can see, the church in Spain, it is separated from whatever the hell is going on in Rome. Church of Rome, the king / Church of Spain, not really buddies. We must therefore remember that when we speak of the church in the Philippines during the Spanish regime, we mean a peculiarly Spanish church serving the ends of Spanish Empire. This is not to say, however, that the clergy in the colony did not come in conflict with the political representatives of the crown. While they served the same monarch, the King of Spain, the clerics' attempts to enlarge their powers and defend their own material interests within the colonial establishment often resulted in bitter discord between them and lay officials. In such instances, the Spanish clergy invoked the power of the papacy to reinforce their stand. So, you see, initially, Spain's government, the monarchy, tried to use the church, the Spanish church, to further their ends. But in practice, the church that they kind of cozied up with, were like, oh, but we are the church. We're calling the name of the Pope to invoke our power over this. In such instances, the Spanish clergy invoked the power of the papacy to enforce their stand. One such dispute arose during the early years of colonization, which brings us to Friars versus Encomenderos. Sounds familiar? Encomenderos? Hello, it's Cairo. It's Cairo-chan. Welcome to the stream. Oh no, it's fine. I like it when people are talkative in my streams. It gives more insight. The immediate question concerned the collection of tributes. Tributes meaning, the money or the products coming from the work of the people. The annual tribute was exacted from all Christian adult males, excluding the native nobility, which we will see in chapter 3, which I don't think we can finish today because I will be ending the stream at 2 p.m. The tax was justified as a recognition of Castilian sovereignty. The agents charged with the collection of the tribute were the Encomenderos. Spanish subjects granted this privilege by the crown as a reward for their services. Part of this tribute was supposed to go toward the support of missionaries who were to instruct the people in the Christian doctrine. It was inevitable that the Encomenderos and the religious should become rivals over the conquered territories. There was no quarrel between them over the need of a culturally inferior people for guardianship. The question was, who should be the guardians, the church or the Encomenderos? The property and the labor of the inhabitants were, after all, not trifling matters. Anxious to gain the loyalty of the native, the friars bitterly assailed the exorbitant exactions and other abuses of the Encomenderos. No doubt, some priests were voicing a genuine concern for their new flock, while others protested their maltreatment because they feared this might jeopardize their missionary work. Still, the material motivations cannot be discounted. So, at first, the friars were like, oh, the Encomenderos, they're abusing the people, they're also abusing us. But they had their own, their own agenda. Governor Gomez Perez Dasmariñas, for example, did not conceal his suspicion that the friars' championship of the natives was merely a pretext for ecclesiastical aggrandizement in the secular sphere. Friars complained that the Encomenderos often withheld their stipends. In their effort to undercut the power of the Encomenderos, the clergy raised theoretical questions which involved the king's legal and moral authority. So now they're undermining the king, which basically put them there. Bishop Domingo de Salazar held that the right to tax the natives stemmed from the supernatural character of Spanish sovereignty, and therefore tribute could not be lawfully exacted unless the Spanish authorities provided the natives with religious instruction. So basically, they're saying that since the Church of God, gave you the right to conquer these people, you can't just colonize them and get their taxes for free. Basically, you have to religiously instruct them. You have to give them a religion. So in the 1580s, the friars tried to implement this view by authorizing some encomenderos to collect a modest living allowance, not as encomenderos, but as deputy preachers of the gospel, effectively putting the encomenderos under the friars because they're deputy preachers. They're basically invoking the name of God to make them know that we are in power. The church is in power here, and you're only here because we allow you to. The Great Debate. The material contradiction was fought in the realm of consciousness. The philosophical and theological hair-splitting that both sides resorted to disguised a very real bone of contention: the material benefactions that colonialism brought in its wake. The legal and theological debates between the clerics and the political advisors of the king expressed the respective interests of the contending parties. The problem revolved around the supposed dual role of the king. Within Spain, he was a natural sovereign, but in his colonies, he was a supernatural monarch, meaning that, since he is the king of Spain, it is natural that he rules there, but he can only rule these colonies, the lands that they conquered, because the church allowed him to. That is the view that they're trying to propose. This was the position taken by a number of Jesuit prelates in the Philippines in a memorandum which they submitted in 1591 to Governor Gomez Perez Dasmariñas. The memorandum argued that as a result of Alexandrian donation, the Pope had merely transferred to the monarchy a part of his supernatural sovereignty. You know what's funny? This reminds me of current state of things where they're saying this certain person is the appointed of God, that he is the one, he is the chosen one that will save the Philippines. Bishop Domingo de Salazar, who spearheaded the fight, later presented these same arguments, more systematically anchoring the Pope's claim to supernatural sovereignty over all men on the plenitudo potestatis conferred by Christ upon Saint Peter on his successors. Because if you would remember, the papacy is built upon the idea that it is the church of Saint Peter, and Saint Peter was the one chosen by Christ to basically make his church, and therefore they believe that they're the only legit ones. This meant that although the Pope may not have direct temporal authority over infidels, and when they say infidels, anyone who doesn't believe in the power of the church, they have the right to exercise temporary jurisdiction over them in order to accomplish the spiritual objectives of his supernatural sovereignty. And this was the sovereignty he had delegated to the Castilian king. By casting doubts on the natural sovereignty of the king, the clerics were opening the door to papal intervention in the temporal affairs of the colony. Obviously, the king's advocates could not accept that Alexandrian donation as the sole foundation for the crown's title to the conquered territories, because this would base Spain's claims to the islands upon a concession emanating from a source outside Spain. This would confer on the Pope or his representative powers that might in the future erode the king's. Official circles in Spain were already emphasizing the importance of the Alexandrian donation by challenging its juridical value. The controversy regarding the moral and legal basis of Spanish sovereignty was a raging question during the first 40 years of occupation. Now we move on to the resolution of the conflict. How are you, my dear ducklings? I hope that you are having your lunch. I am not. I'm not yet having my lunch. I'm going to at least try to finish this part of the book. An appropriate resolution to the impasse was sought. Natural sovereignty must reinforce supernatural sovereignty. This would give the king a legal right to collect tribute. So again, it's all about collecting tribute. It's all about money, power. But then, natural sovereignty over a territory could be acquired only as a result of a free and voluntary election on the part of the natives thereof. This had been one of the 7 principles suggested by Francisco de Vitoria, Prima Professor of Theology at the University of Salamanca, as the basis by which the king might acquire a clear and just title for the exercise of political jurisdiction over the Indies. It was therefore decided that the various chieftains of the land be induced to enter into a pact with the Spanish monarchs for mutual protection against the infidels and to elect him as their natural sovereign. In 1598, the Spanish governor received a royal order instructing him to encourage the natives of all provinces to submit themselves voluntarily to the sovereignty of the Spanish king. The governors directed the alcaldes mayores and the religious to gather the native chiefs of their respective areas as well as the followers of each chief so they might elect the Castilian king as their natural lord and sovereign. So, again, they were in conflict with the church because the church thinks that they only had the right to these lands because the church allowed them to. So in response to that, they were like, you know what, we should get the natives to agree to being under us. That's basically their solution. The elections. Elections. In a letter to the king, Governor Francisco Tello detailed the arguments that were used to induce the chiefs to take their oath of fealty to the Spanish crown. They were told how God, our Lord, had granted them great kindness and grace in keeping them under the evangelical faith. Our Lord had liberated them from the blindness and tyranny in which they were as subjects of the devil. What is still more weighty, the most cursed and perverse sect of Mahoma had begun, though its followers and disciples to spread and scatter through some of the islands of this archipelago its pestilent and abominable creed. But the true God was pleased at that time to bring the Spanish people into these islands, which was a cure and remedy for the mortal sickness which the said Mohammedan sect had already commenced to cause them. Besides this, the Spaniards had freed them from the tyranny with which their kings and lords were possessing themselves for their wives and goods, which was the greatest injury which could be inflicted upon them. They were also reminded of that great favor and natural lord, the Catholic king, Don Felipe, our sovereign. Where are we? I can't really read. To maintain them and keep them in peace and justice with much gentleness and love. Our Lord might have deferred the conquests of these islands. It would have been made by other kings who were not so Catholic as a punishment for the idolatry which they practiced, when they would have fallen into greater blindness and sin than before, and they would not have been so rich and well provided as they are, nor would their property have been so safe. So basically, they were framing the conquering of our lands as something that is positive, because otherwise we would be conquered by other people who were more tyrannical than them, basically. And just a side note, the name Mahoma, it might be familiar from like elders saying that panahon pa ni Mahoma yan, saying that that is very, very old and outdated. Mahoma is just another name for Muhammad, or the main prophet of Islam. So basically they're saying, these Islamic perverts, they will be scattering the words of the devil or something like that. So we have to save the people of the Indies who really need us, blah, blah, blah. So, I don't know, do people still use the term panahon ni Mahoma these days? Because basically, that's kind of sus. The election was solemnly carried out by the understanding that the king and his subjects bound themselves to render certain services to one another. The king promised to give them religious instruction, to rule them with justice, and to protect them from their infidel enemies. The chieftains agreed to pay a moderate tribute, basically a tax, and to forgive all abusive exactions in the past. Conquest legitimized. Now we're moving on to the next part, which is this one. This would be the end of our reading this very, very short sub-chapter. Thus was conquest legitimized as a contractual agreement and submission transformed into liberation. Basically, they were, not directly enslaving, but yes, it is. They conquered us, making it seem like they are liberating us from the Islamic rule, who were basically just the same as them. They were doing the same thing. They're just a different flavor. The oath of fealty of the chiefs was used as the supposed legal basis for the exaction of tribute to support the church and the Spanish outpost in the Philippines. It also influenced to a large degree the evolution of native institutions during the first century of rule. Quasi-feudal practices and institutions were established, although feudalism in its classical European form did not materialize in the islands, for the kind of feudal relations that eventually took root in the country were conditioned by other factors. So, again, what is the main takeaway from this? It's that Spain, when they conquered us, the way we were like under feudal rule is not because Spain itself was like that. They were actually gearing towards mercantilism and capitalism, but it's because of all the church involvement and the legitimization of their conquests that things became the way they were. All right, let me just on chapter 3, Barangganic societies. Hold on, it's not, is it? Wait. Yes. On chapter 3, we have proto-anthropologists, aborting historical trend, pre-Spanish settlements, blah, blah, blah. And we will be continuing this, actually. This is not the last time I will be reading this. This is not the last time that we will be discussing this, my dearests. Oh, thank you for the lurk. Also, thank you for staying here. I didn't really expect a large audience. So less than 10 or, around 10 is enough. At least there are some people who are interested in learning about their history. Good luck with your classes. And again, everyone, thank you. I'm not really quite sure when I will be doing this, but most probably I'll be doing this in another morning. Hold on, let me just quickly get my schedule for this week. Is it there? Oh yes, there it is. Let me just put it back. Okay, Okay, let's put it over here. Oh, wait, yes. So, today's Monday, and we have finished our first part of the Philippines, a pastor visited by Renato Constantino. Tomorrow, I will be streaming at 8 p.m. Hopefully, I will not be late because it's at night. And as you can see, it's still to be announced, but let's see. I actually downloaded quite a few games. So, either I will be playing Gris, or hold on, let me just check my Steam, because I bought 2 games yesterday. And hold on, what did either I will be streaming Gris, Helltaker, or Martial Law, or Tax Fugitive tomorrow. I still have not decided what game I am to. Wait, what happened? Oh no, what happened? Why did I disappear? Oh no! Anyway, I'm not quite sure what is happening with my stream. Oh, good. Good God. Let me remove this one. Yes, Tax Fugitive. I'm planning to play that game. I was drunk last night, and it is one of the games that I bought while drunk. Oh, you also play Helltaker? So yeah, I am not yet quite sure which one I will play tomorrow, but those are among the choices: Tax Fugitive, Grace, Martial Law, and Helltaker. I also have Overcooked too, but that would be more fun if I had other people to play with. We will see. We will see. I'll be talking to Mino. For some reason, we are a buy one take one package. On Wednesday, I will be playing Minecraft in the morning, 9 a.m. solo survival, because my solo world has been corrupted. I will be starting a new one. I'm still very, very pissed about that because I built a very pretty house and I got a pet sheep, a pet wolf. Oh, no, is that a wolf? No, it's not a wolf. It's a fox, yes. But yeah, they're all gone now. My file has been corrupted, so I'm starting a new one. On Thursday, I won't be streaming. I have a lot of work to do. And then on Friday, we're going to do a TGIF karaoke. Again, it's a regular thing. When it's Friday, we do karaoke. And this time, it will be OPM edition. So if you have requests, as long as I know it, you may message me or suggest in any of my platforms. And then on Sunday, 9 a.m., we're going to continue the tarot series. I already did this last week. I didn't stream last week. For obvious reasons, everyone was sad and so was I. But last week, I started the tarot series. I explained the history of tarot. On Sunday, we are going to talk about misconceptions about the tarot. So things like it came from the devil, or like if you're doing tarot, you should be doing it for free because it's a gift from God, or whatever. Things like that. Or what other misconceptions are there from tarot? Oh, the misconceptions that you shouldn't do tarot unless someone gifted you a deck. How are people earning from their tarot decks if people are not buying them? Also, other misconceptions. Oh, one that I unfriended a person over. They're basically saying that if you're doing tarot, you shouldn't be collecting money from people. You should not earn from it. What else? Oh, the Hollywood myth that if you see death card on your tarot spread, someone will die or you will die. Things like that. What else? Tarot misconceptions. Oh, that tarot is like written in stone. If you see it there, it's going to happen. That's why some people are afraid to get their cards read. That's also another stupid thing propagated by Hollywood. Damn it. Starting out on tarot. How do you actually start reading tarot? I'm going to be discussing that. Which pets? Wait, which pets? Not the pets from Minecraft. Oh no, honey, they drowned in the ocean. Because for some reason, I'm not sure what exactly happened, but my map looks like someone pasted a huge chunk of a different map in the middle of it. So like you can see it from, because I'm using, what do you call that? I'm using Zero's map, and like if you view it from the large map, you will see that like there is like a huge geometrical chunk that shouldn't be there. And so my pets, after I booted it up, I ended up in the middle of the ocean, and so my pets drowned, all of them. But you know what? It's fine. It's okay. I can have new pets. That's still. Imagine you have two different maps. you cut out the middle part of one map and then the middle part of one map, same shape, and then you exchange them so the sides would not, blend in towards the rest of the environment. It's kind of like that. So there's been an error. I don't think it's anyone's fault, but it's still sad that that world disappeared, but it's okay. I'm going to create a new world, a solo survival world. But if you are interested in playing with me and my friends, we have a Minecraft server. You can actually claim it by channel points, pearls. It's 5,000 channel points. I don't think it's that hard to accumulate if you actually watch my streams, because I talk a lot, so my streams take long. It's not really that hard to get. But if you're a personal friend of mine, I will give you the link for free and demand you to go into my world and check out Luzon, the lesbian nation of Luzon, because we have divided our Minecraft server into 3 main places: Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Luzon is where all the gays are. It's mostly a creative island. I give them creative mode so they can build stupid things like the Jollibee and a yacht in the river. And then we have Mindanao, mostly they're friends of my snail. And I'm not really sure what they're doing there. They started out as like mostly survival, but now I see they're doing better builds with creative mode, and good for them. As long as everyone is having fun and not griefing other people, I'm fine with that. Visayas is not yet colonized for some reason. No one is living in Visayas, so if you want to have a land that is free from other people, you want to start on a survival mode kind of thing, you can go to Visayas and just do your own thing there. We don't really basically the rule of our server is everyone do their own thing and just don't grief other people unless you are in an agreement with each other that you will be griefing each other. Just don't touch other people's shit. Hello, Mori, you are late, but it's okay. We just finished reading the first 2 chapters of the Philippines, a pastor visited by Renato Constantino. It's okay. I know that you were in class, and don't worry, the VOD would still be here. I'm not quite sure if I should upload the VOD in YouTube, because of the things that I said, I might get red tagged. Not that it's something new for me. So yeah, I will be thinking about if I will be uploading the VOD today in YouTube or not. But basically, yeah, we are going to be doing chapter 3. If I am not in the mood tomorrow for doing games, I might just continue this, but I think it would be fun to do the tax evasion game, right? So for those who are new here, who are not really familiar with the in-chat jokes, hi, my name is Bibi Bakunawa, and the government will never find me. They will never collect taxes from me unless they collect the 203 billion from you-know-who. Yes, tax evasion poggers. Anyways, if the government wants to collect my taxes, they can come find me in Biringan, where I will feed them to hundreds of sigbins. Anyway, children, before I go, we still have some time to chit-chat. Before I go, does anyone have any takeaway from our chat? Any realizations? I'm conducting this as if it's a class. Oh, this is the second time anyone has compared me to Lady Dimitrescu, and I think it's a big compliment. We're both very, very tall ladies. I think she's about 9 feet tall or something. I'm 8'2" plus 4 with heels, and I can literally step on a lot of you. Yes, you may, my dear. Yes, you may go out. We are just wrapping up things. Yes. Oh, only 80 points for that? Oh, you can easily get a lot of that. That is the most redeemed item. Oh, Magindara. Magindara redeemed it for you. Are you ready? Are you ready, my dear ducklings? Okay. As I always say, aral-aral before ara-ara. Mopo, you suddenly come alive when I talk about stepping on someone. Hello, box gone. Hello. Why are y'all arriving when we are about to finish up? Oh. So again, for those who have not seen the rest of my streams, hi, hello. We are going to do a stream tomorrow at 8 in the evening, and hopefully I will not be late. Yes, you have no excuses, Mopo. I'm just looking for who we can actually raid today. I don't have any channels that I follow that are on at the moment. That's so weird. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching the stream. I hope to see you again next time, and it would really help me a lot if you spread the word. Send out my channel link, send out my Facebook or Twitter link to everyone, to your parents, to your family, to your homophobic aunts and uncles, to your brothers and sisters, your friends, your enemies, the local politicians, but not the ones who support you know who. I will get hunted down and I will be turned into bread. But you know what? If we all turn into bread, that's okay. I'm sure that I will be delicious. That's the thing. I don't see anyone that I can raid. That is so weird. This is the first time that it happened to me. Everyone is offline. Does anyone know VTuber online right now that they think should be raided? Because I clearly do not have enough friends. All my friends are offline. All my friends are bred. Any suggestions? See? Oh wait, who is that? Sarasa CH? Let's look for her. Let me just open my Sarasa CH. Oh, is she online right now? Is she on?
Double cover on 500 followers.
Is she? I'm not sure. Is this recent? Let me follow. And if she appears on my... Let me just refresh. She's still not appearing on my followed channels list. Is she online? Oh, I don't think she is because it says offline. Check out this League of Legends stream from yesterday. I see. I don't think we can... I don't think we can raid anyone. Everyone is offline. Am I the only one streaming at this hour? We started at 10 a.m. How long have I been streaming? I've been talking non-stop. It says here that I've been streaming for 1.5 hours, but I'm sure that it's been almost three or 4 hours because our stream has been cut off several times. Anyway, since we don't have anyone to bug right now, I think I should just... Oh, Eclipse CH? Hi, Liam! I love my darling! Beautiful! Hello, I love you! Sorry, just a sudden surge of gay. Hi, welcome, Halia. We're about to end our stream, but I'm glad to see you here, honey. I missed you. I was so formal earlier. Now that Halia's here, I'm just being gay. But anyway, I'm sure that you are all used to me being a messy gay. So, yeah. Oh, I see. Thank you for staying here. And I hope to see you again in my other streams. I will be on again tomorrow. I'm having a hard time ending this chat. This is a game of, no, you hang up first. Especially now that I see you. No, you hang up first. Who am I raiding? We don't have anyone. Who am I raiding? We don't have online now. I think. She is playing Valorant. Earlier she was not. Okay, let's try to raid her. It still won't let me. Let me just refresh my stream manager. Okay, let's raid channel. Oh, there we go. Okay, our raid message is Bakunawa raid, and I'm going to click start raid there. It was great having you here, my dear ducklings, but it's time now for me to actually eat breakfast and lunch at the same time. So au revoir, adios, paalam, annyeong, sampai jumpa, sayonara, bibi, bye bye. Are we? Did we? Yes.